Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Really happy to be a part of the event today. Uh, I would be delighted to share with you my point of view, thoughts, and experiences around what we've seen within Dell and with our customers on digital transformation. So let's get started. Digital transformation, as we know of it, is the integration of digital technology into all areas of business, fundamentally changing how you operate and deliver value to customers. Well, it's not just that, it's also a cultural change that requires organizations to continually challenge the status quo, experiment, and get comfortable with failure. That being the case, why is digital transformation then so elusive? Well, one of the hardest questions in digital transformation is how do we get over the initial humps from the vision stage to execution? Sometimes it could mean walking away from long-standing business processes that have probably in the past defined the growth and the success of companies and the very reason that companies were built upon, in favor of relatively new practices that are still being defined. Therefore, in a lot of cases, it means a complete change in status quo. Digital could, of course, mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And therefore, when leaders take on the mantle of digital transformation for their organizations, they need to be fully aware of this reality as they frame their conversations around digital. Transformation should begin primarily with a problem statement. The quantum and the outcome of digital transformation would really depend on how clearly the problem statement is defined, how it translates into an opportunity and an aspirational goal. An organization or an initiative could have all of those things: a customer view, the right products, right services, data to back insights, and really cool technologies to take all of this ahead. But if leadership and culture aren't at the heart of digital transformation, typically the success is subdued or it completely fails. A great leader, Dan Schulman, the CEO of PayPal, says the biggest impediment to a company's future success is really its past success. Digital transformation today is not the problem of the CTO alone. Technology is a problem that belongs to the CEO and has to be envisioned at that level. The entire leadership of the organization, therefore, has to rally behind transformation objectives if we need to see this being a success. Let's look at a few facts on how relevant digital transformation is turning, especially in this scenario where a lot of us, in small ways or bigger, have changed the way we work and have changed the way we deliver our products and services to customers in this scenario of COVID and other pandemic-related scenario, right? Well, first of all, IDC forecasts that the global spending on digital technologies and transformations, whether it be on product, pure technology platforms, or services, will grow to the tune of 10.4% in a year like 2020 itself, thereby taking the spends to $1.3 trillion. Now, given the dynamic that all industries and businesses are going through, this is a mammoth number. Let's look at an industry in particular, in the healthcare industry. McKinsey data shows that there's an accelerated shift towards streaming and online fitness, unprecedented before this. And this is not just going to be limited to these times where we kind of little lockdown on our movement, but it's here to stay permanently. Moving on, Dell has actually conducted what we call the Digital Transformation Index. Since we are one of the leading players in delivering platforms and solutions around digital transformation, we've gone ahead and conducted surveys, and we've been doing that for the last 6 odd years in order to see how and at what stage various customers and industries are with respect to adoption of digital transformation as a part of their core business processes, right? Now that really has defined customers into 5 buckets. Spearheading digital transformation is about 5%, as we see in 2018, that classify themselves as leaders. Soon to follow are what we call adopters. Now, adopters are primarily mature digital plans in place, investments and innovation which is in place at an organization level. Now, typically about 23% of the respondents in the survey in 2018 were adopters. Then you have the evaluators, which are primarily, they're gradual in their adoption of transformation and planning, towards taking on digital transformation in a serious manner in the organizations. Followers are those that invest with some inhibition, and their plans are probably limited to 1 or 2 initiatives. Laggards are those that don't have a digital plan. Now, we've conducted this survey in 16 and 18, and those are the results that I have. And clearly, we're probably on the verge of conducting that this year again. Now, what we've seen is that the curve is positively moving towards more followers and evaluators tending to be leaders and adopters. While those that have probably cloud native organizations that have completely disrupted a particular industry in the way they've taken on digital transformation and therefore are categorized as leaders, continue to be the top 5%, whether, as provided by the survey, there is a huge increase in the adopter base from a mere 14% of the survey respondents to a huge 23%. And the movement has really happened from the followers and the evaluators to becoming adopters. Let's go a little deeper into this. Now, 53% of business leaders in the emerging markets believe their businesses will disrupt rather than be disrupted within the next 5 years, compared to 40% in developed nations. Now, this is also an outcome of the survey. And what this really tells us that whether it's economies or countries, emerging economies and markets really have a great opportunity to adopt digital transformation in some of their core offerings and applications and actually leapfrog in terms of progress and success, and do not really have to follow the sequential path of adopting technology into their processes. Now, this means that when adopted right and when implemented right, digital transformation in any core business process has the capability of really providing exponential success and progress and help in disrupting the industry in a positive manner. Let's also look at what the top 5 barriers are to digital transformation. These are data privacy and security concerns, lack of budgets and resources. Now, this is an important thing, which is why there is so much stress on digital transformation being the vision of the CEO and the complete leadership team. Another very important impediment could be lack of right in-house skill sets and expertise. An organization really needs to identify what skill sets are internal, which ones they need to hire as a part of their investments, and finally, which ones they should outsource in order to ensure that their transformation journey is not faced with roadblocks. Regulation and legislative changes are extremely important as well. And an immature digital culture, becoming a part of your business processes and an organizational culture is again extremely important for digital transformation to be taken up seriously. Right. In the backdrop of the Dell Digital Transformation Index survey, let's now go on to understand what are the various customers' transformation strategies and how they really vary depending on the stage and the level of adoption across various customers. So let's start right at the top. Right now, complete transformation, which involves using multiple technologies to fundamentally change how a business goes to market, is what we call transformation in essence. And about 25% of the market is kind of known to actually adopt this level of transformation. Now, this is actually a huge number and also indicates in a sense, how technology is actually revamping and energizing innovation across various industries and players. Let's take a few examples. Now, there are certain organizations that have actually been born cloud native companies. Say, for example, Ola and even Uber. Now, these are organizations within the cab hailing industry that have been born cloud native. What does that mean? Their core business process and their revenue model is based on their application, which is housed on a cloud. Now, right from customer acquisition to, let's say, their vendor management, which is in a sense drivers, their entire driver management, whether it's feedback, whether it's hiring, whether it's training, is all through online platforms. And finally, the transaction from the customer to the organization, which is the final e-commerce, is all on the cloud. Now, we all know how Ola and Uber have been transforming this industry and have literally been disrupting the cab hailing industry, as opposed to how the cab hailing industry was about 5 to 6 years back, right? Let's move to the next stage. Extension is really the next stage. About 29 to 30% of the market sits in this bucket of transformation. Now, here is where disruptive technologies are added in order to enable significant improvements to an existing workload, application, or an ecosystem, right? Let's take the example of traditional retail chains, which have been operating in an off model for about decades, right? And now, owing to customer behavior of shopping online, they have had to set up online versions of themselves. Now, while they are experts in logistics, they are experts in supply chain, and they're experts in sourcing and promotional offers. In the absence of an online platform where all of this is accessible to a customer through various channels, be it mobile, be it tabs, through browsers and applications, the entire audience of customers is limited. And therefore, giants like Walmart have had to face the onslaught from Amazon and finally move online in order to retain their customer base. Let's now look at the third bucket of transformation strategy, which is substitution. Now, this is about 23% of the market, basis research. And this means replacing older technologies with newer ones, probably in smaller modules, in order to achieve some level of IT operational benefit. Let's look at companies that are taking off some of their workloads and moving it to the cloud to be completely managed from an infrastructure, a manageability, as well as the application efficiency by the cloud service providers. Let's say, for example, outsourcing an entire HR ops platform from being in-house to kind of housing a lot of employees to do the business processes and steps for the organization, to completely outsourcing and kind of making it an online self-service kind of a portal with minimal human touch. Now, that is a clear example of where a workload is moved to the cloud or to an online platform, and without really affecting efficiencies and effectiveness for an organization, huge productivity improvements and cost cuts. Finally, about 22% of the market would sit in a stage which we call not transforming. Now, those organizations transform so little, and they do not get on the digital bandwagon and ultimately have to face either losses in the long term, or probably in worse situations be completely eliminated. We all know examples like Kodak, Nokia, that were eliminated because they did not undertake necessary digital transformation while their industry was moving in a direction that they couldn't fathom. Right? Now, this gives us a good understanding of sometimes for survival and sometimes for productivity. At different stages, organizations will have to evaluate their strategy around digital transformation and pick up what suits them and their industry the best. Moving on. Now this does not go on to say that a digital transformation is not wrought with the necessary challenges. Now, there are challenges and there are huge and important decisions that need to be taken if digital transformation has to be adopted in a serious manner, right? And therefore, let's quickly go through what are the challenges that exist. The first and most important is reluctance to adapt. Now, now when transformation is underway, right from the top brass to the frontline sales, people should be open to change because it will lead to changes in their day-to-day practices, upskilling resources to take on those workloads that would need human intervention necessarily in the future stage once technology adoption is adequate, right? Therefore, it would need change of skills, it would need upskilling, and it would need a cultural shift in terms of using technology and making the investments that are required. Therefore, it's extremely important to ensure that there is a clear understanding driven by an objective and the value of the transformation is communicated across all levels. Let's move to the next challenge. One of the key aspects that organizations face is that they capture a lot of data, and they do have a lot of data, whether it's customer information, whether it's process information or internal, but these exist in silos. And because they exist in silos, the data is either inaccurate, inadequate, or unreliable. This being the case, it's important to foster a culture of continuous learning. While this as an objective could be housed with the data management team under the CTO of the organization, whatever implications would fall upon other businesses and functions within the organization will need to be adopted. And there has to be a continuous learning process as to how data needs to be captured, saved, and what tools have to be used in order to ensure that these data silos talk to each other for generating the right insights. Now that we've spoken about data, the next important aspect is really inferior knowledge and skills, which is typically an impediment when data needs to move to the next level of insights. And therefore, there have to be the right kind of skilling and training programs to ensure that data is understood, that the data that's being captured is understood and consumed in a manner that we can actually bring out relatable and insightful outcomes from wedding various data sets together. The fourth important challenge is while all of this from a foundational level is being put in place, there seems to be a lack of direction and strategy. Like we mentioned before, all digital transformation has to rest on a business goal, which is then given a measurable aspect. And that should really act as an aspirational metric to go achieve. Digital transformation has to be modular. While it has to be all encompassing and should be impacted at the cultural level, it can best be measured and tracked when it is broken up into understandable modules within various functions. Therefore, it is important that we keep this modular and, more importantly, keep the business model simple. And when they are kept simple, then we should be able to fathom how to digitize them. Now, we're going to look a little more detail as we go into the educational industry and what kind of challenges probably exist there in detail. But this is just to kind of give you an example as to what some of the theories that we've listed under digital transformation, the challenges and the remedies really play out with respect to a particular industry. Finally, in the list of challenges comes system incompatibility, which is leading to expending of time and money. It's extremely important that we drive the right stakeholder collaboration to determine infrastructure budgets that need to be taken up, either in the near term or in the long term, to ensure that there is necessary technology upgradation. Technology upgradation would mean in both aspects. The hardware technology, which should be modern infrastructure, which is future-proof, so that the new cloud-native applications can be easily housed in these modern infrastructure. And secondly, updating the software, a lot of institutes end up using older versions, whether it is primary basic platform level softwares or the learning management softwares. So upgrading both hardware and software becomes pertinent when an industry launches on the digital transformation bandwagon. We spoke about education as an example in brief. Let's go a little more into the detail. What typically could be areas where digital transformation would impact education? Firstly, let's talk about right down there, the subject or the content. Enhancing course curriculum in order to include modern educational streams and 21st century skills is extremely important, whether they are deemed universities, government run or private institutions. Now, why is this important? Because academics needs to keep in tune with what industry wants. Typically, one of the biggest banes is that academia doesn't keep in tune with industry, and therefore they are faced with challenges around employability and jobs, relevant jobs for their outgoing students. Therefore, technology can play an extremely important role in enhancing course curriculum in a way that employability is enhanced. For example, coding today is becoming almost a mundane skill that needs to be incorporated into students, well, not at postgraduate, not at undergraduate, but at school levels. Now, what that shows is slowly but surely, technology is really becoming an important determinant in how skills have to be built in children. Another important example of 21st century skills is industry always demands people to work in collaborative teams, to work in a practical aspect of doing and realizing, not being afraid to fail. Well, that is the modus operandi of education that needs to be incorporated at the institute university level as well, right? Technology and industry players in technology can play a huge and important role in doing so. Now, the next is really technology revamping modes of educational instruction through blended learning and smart assessments. We've all seen that, especially during COVID, the challenge that exists before universities and before education boards is how do they conduct some of these evaluations that are almost national or regional in their stature, not in a closed classroom, but in an online platform, and to still make it effective both for students and for the faculty that is involved in these evaluations. Third is digitization can help in automation of academic administration. Now, this is not something that we talk very often, but is extremely important, whether they are back office operations in admissions, placements, alumni relations, student support services. In all of this, technology and the platforms built on technology can play a very effective role in making this entire experience seamless for universities and stakeholders of universities. Finally, digital interventions can help education institutions to manage communication and relationship with their stakeholders, whether they are investors in the university, whether it's government bodies or students in academia, right? Now, all of this is certainly very large scale, and therefore academic leaders and policymakers need to enable more efficient and responsive integration of technology in academia. Now, I've really deep dive into education being one stream, right? Because you know, education is something that we're all talking about, right? As to how it is getting revamped in this stage where during the pandemic, digital transformation is almost moving at astronomical levels. But of course, it comes with its bane as well. What we at Dell are hearing every day by interacting with our customers is when all of the employees in organizations, students and teachers in education institutions are working and doing their jobs remotely, there is a huge looming risk of cyber threats as well. And we're actually seeing a rise and a panic in certain industries more than others, of course, where there is always a threat, an underlying threat of cyber attacks, of very important business processes being brought to a sudden halt because of unnecessary venturing into networks. And so therefore, academic leaders and policy makers need to enable more efficient and responsive integration of technology in academia. With this, Thank you so much for your time today, and it was truly a pleasure to be a part of this. Thank you.